Good morning, NIA families and community. Welcome to another family engagement presentation. I'm happy for you to join us today. Today we're going to be sharing a little bit about the WIDA assessment as is upcoming. It's that time of the school year, and giving a little bit of an overview of what to anticipate, the purpose of the WIDA assessment, some of the expectations, requirements, and guidelines. Before we jump in, I do want to share a little bit about the requirements and the background regarding the WIDA assessment. So students are expected to have the WIDA assessment administered to them if they are under the criteria of an English language learner. And so students are identified as such starting back from when you enrolled your student at the enrollment process. There is a home language survey that parents are asked in the enrollment application. And it identifies if a student has a second language at home. So this doesn't necessarily mean that a student is not proficient in English, or even that they speak a second language. If there is a second language identified at home, and again, this is identified by the parent during the application process, then a student is evaluated to see if they indeed are proficient in English language. The purpose of this is to provide students the necessary support services that they may need, being an English language learner, having a second language throughout their elementary or educational career until they pass or exit the assessment by assessing at a proficient level. So a little bit about the WIDA. It's referred to as the WIDA Access Test. The WIDA Access is basically a standardized assessment. It's used to evaluate the level of a student's English language proficiency, and then thereafter identify and assess their level of progression in English language. Several states utilize the WIDA assessment to measure students' English language proficiency. And this is from students from first grade through 12th who assess online, and at the kindergarten level, they assess paper pencil, and it's a one-on-one assessment. So the manner in which students are assessed is, like I said, first through 12th grade, it's an online standardized assessment. There are 4 domains in which students are assessed. There's the reading component, listening, speaking, and then writing. So there is a certain time frame that is provided. It's not a time test, but it generally takes the noted times that are shared on the screen. It's about 60 minutes for reading, a little bit more for the listening, 50 minutes for speaking. And yes, students are speaking into a microphone. They are answering prompts or questions to measure their proficiency in spoken English. And then, of course, the written part of the assessment. And this is the time that's generally allotted. So with these 4 domains, these 4 elements of the assessment, students are not assessed all in one day. This is spread over a period of time, generally one assessment. So we're not overwhelming students. One assessment is given a day within a window of testing that is provided to us from the state. So common questions that are asked, is the score going to affect my child's grade? Is this going to have some type of, punitive impact on my child? Absolutely not. It does not impact their grade. It's not included in their grade at all. The assessment is a separate score that gives us data, information in which identifying students' English proficiency level. It also helps support us knowing how we need to tailor things for your student, both from the teacher's perspective and point, and then from the administrative end, for planning, for purchases of supplemental resources, of identifying schedules of support services, and how we're going to tackle and support students' needs based on the different levels that we identify, that are identified within the WIDA assessment. Again, a little bit more about when and how long the assessment is. So we will identify the WIDA assessment. There is, like I said, a window, but we will identify specific days and times in which you can anticipate your student to be assessed. The window is provided to us from the state of Michigan, and within that window, which is a several-week window, each school, each of our academies identifies a specific time frame in which different grade levels, possibly different sections, are going to be assessed. And from there, teachers will specifically share with parents when to anticipate their child going to begin testing on the different domains. And then once we complete the assessments, we give parents a heads up for multiple reasons. One, ensuring and hopefully students are well to be in school, to be on time, of course, to be well rested. A conversation is always helpful. And then, of course, having their school issued Chromebook with them ready for testing days. So all of this information is shared specifically with parents not only by administration, but specifically by each teacher. And like I said, we're not overwhelming students with multiple domains to be assessed in 1 or 2 given days. We generally just give one assessment a day. So a common question that parents ask: can we prepare? Should we study? Should we, somehow do any practice questions? And no. So you're not able to prepare, and there's no need to prepare. This assessment is gauging your student's proficiency level. So it's not something to study for. There is no study guide. You don't need to prepare for it. It is an informative assessment to identify a student's proficiency level, and that is all. So we don't want to stress students about it. It is an assessment that informs our decision making, whether it be curriculum planning or again, support services like I had mentioned. So one thing we do ask of parents to do is to help us by having a conversation with your student. Having those open lines of communication, say, oh yeah, I know you're starting the WIDA assessment tomorrow. Make sure you're trying your best. Making sure kids, obviously, like any given school day, but specifically on test days, make sure children are well rested, that they've had a healthy breakfast, or making sure they're here in school on time to have a breakfast here with us, making sure that, have a conversation after school and asking how they felt things went. Definitely not wanting to add any anxiety or any stress to children in terms of the test taking process. As we know, naturally, test taking sometimes can be a bit nerve-wracking for kids. And then, of course, making sure that, of course, you're always encouraging and motivating your kids. So there are different levels, and it is a scale from 1 to 6, 6 being the highest. This is a common question in terms of, is it a grade? No, it's not a letter grade, but it is a level that is identified. Each individual language section is scored differently. So those 4 domains get a separate scaled score for each student. And then in the report, you'll see, similar to what you see in the slide here, you'll see a breakdown of the different domains with an identified scale score between 1 and 6. Again, 6 being the highest. And then there is an overall score of the scores combined. There's no way to fail the WIDA assessment. Again, it is not a specifically an academic based type of assessment. It is a language proficiency assessment. So the breakdown of that score is shared in a report. Once the reports, we receive the hard copy reports, we do mail them out to families. We keep a copy here. So if you ever want a copy of your student's last WIDA assessment score, we do have copies here in their files. If you're interested to pick up that copy for whatever reason, you didn't receive it or lost it. And again, that broken down report, the parent report, has an explanation of their level. It identifies, beginning, emerging, expanding, and it identifies the meaning of those different indicators and what that means. Teachers are also able to share with parents a little bit more in terms of what we're targeting and what we are individualizing in terms of instruction and support services within our English language learning program for students based on their different levels. All the different levels within WIDA include WIDA indicators and descriptive can-do statements. And so there are, based on those levels, targeted objectives that we're working on with students. And so we're always working on moving them forward and their progression in language proficiency of English. So we use multiple approaches to ensuring that we're supporting English language learners in our school. Many of our schools have a high percentage of English language learners. And so we look at the different components of curriculum, both the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and then the assessed curriculum. So our goal is always to promote engagement in the learning process. So many of our adopted activities and approaches to instruction include collaborative learning and cooperative learning. And so engagement is a big aspect of learning for all students, but specifically for English language learners, focusing on communication, 21st century skills, that students, there's a comprehension of academic terms and vocabulary, and that the spoken language also includes that aspect of communication and comprehension of the language. We're also looking at different strategies to integrate constantly in learning, whether it be with their peers or with the adult professionals in the classroom. Looking at different components of how to progress students in English language, we also adopt and ensure that we have resources that focus on language development for our students, whether it be in their core curriculum or different supplemental resources that we use, many of them which you are likely familiar with, similar to IXL. We have Mystery Science. We use Learning A to Z, which includes both those leveled readers and vocabulary development. We also have iReady, which focuses on English language development and the science of reading. All of these components combined are very much tailored and a strategy in which the language is our focus and cross-curricular connections are made with literacy in mind. So the understanding of both the written and read curriculum in terms of reading in English is essential across content areas. Students need to be able to read, write, and comprehend the language, whether it be in the ELA block or within math, science, and social studies. So these are some of the interventions that we put into place, aside from the parent. So like I said, we will be sharing more information about when we will begin testing for the WIDA assessment. In our calendar, it's noted to begin February 24th. And so this will begin for most all grade levels. More specific scheduled grades and sections will be shared with you forthcoming by your classroom teachers. And the school issued Chromebook for grades first through 6 and for NIA's purposes will be utilized for the assessment. And we will identify which components of that assessment they will be assessed on each day. Students will be assessed in their classroom with their general ed teacher. So they are not removed from the classroom. We have a good percentage of students in each grade level who are under the ELL indicator. And so they will be, they are still assessing on WIDA until they exit. Students do not exit or pass, if you will, the WIDA assessment until they assess at a 4.5 or higher. And so that's a common question as to how do I know when my student no longer has to assess on WIDA? When are they no longer considered a ELL student? So once they score 4.5 or higher, then they are automatically exited and they no longer utilize or are required to complete the WIDA assessment. We talked a little bit about the reports. Again, should you want a report, last year's WIDA report, which were all mailed out, you're able to access that in our main office. Some of the adaptive resources I mentioned, aside from the individualized support that are tailored based on students' levels, WIDA is only one indicator of language proficiency specific to English. We also utilize other sources of data that help us identify how to tailor students' needs. And that, of course, includes NWEA, students in grades 3 through 6 would be MSTEP. We also look at Fontes and Pinnell data. So we don't solely look at the WIDA assessment when we're tailoring students' educational support needs. We do look at multiple sources of data, so we have a wider scope of what is needed based on multiple sources of data. Students who are English language learners and in need of additional support services work also, in addition to the general ed teacher, also work with the paraprofessional who provides support in primarily literacy, but literacy cross content areas with the domains of English language in mind. So both the written and the read and the listening component, all the indicators and domains within English proficiency are considered. So we look at using visuals, having a lot of audio in explaining instruction, coupled with written text, coupled with being able to, based on grade level, break down the literacy component to meet the student where they are. So a lot of times parents will ask me or classroom teachers, okay, so how else can I support my students progressing in English at home? What else can be done? And so, of course, depending on grade level, depending on the level of your child's English language proficiency, there's, always support and methods that parents can use to continue to excel their students forward. And kind of piggyback off of some of the learning that's taking place here at school. So if your child is an emergent or beginner learner of English language, you want to make sure that you're developing literacy holistically. So whether it be reading to your child every day, helping them identify letters, letter sounds, words. It can be through signs, through labeling. It could be fun activities and games, even as simple as on a car ride, having them identify letters and words on signs as you're driving. There's a slew of different approaches that can be used, but always considering literacy and reading and writing And then the comprehension piece of understanding. So talking about what they've read, explaining their understanding of whether it be characters or settings, even while watching a movie, have those subtitles on. And, that's something that can always be part of, a discussion or enjoying a movie between you and your child. I know many parents who are also English language learners highlighted using subtitles really help them develop their English language skills and their proficiency and understanding the English language. But definitely always making it fun and engaging where it's not a daunting or burdening type of task. Of course, kids are doing a lot of work and learning at school. We try not to overwhelm them with excessive homework or excessive work at home. So whatever you do, making sure that it is something that's positive and it's enjoyable, even activities that include a drawing and, being creative and making arts and crafts, labeling things, and using words and language to, expressive speech goes a long way. So making sure that kids understand what it is that they are speaking about and or reading and writing about. Believe that may be the last slide of information. I do want to close with, the support that parents provide and mirror at home starts with open lines of communication and understanding not only their students' academic levels and whether it be in English language, but across content areas and across their academic career at school. That partnership and being aware of how your child is doing is really the foundation and understanding and ability to be able to help them at home. So that's one thing I always encourage and remind parents of. The more you can be supportive, the better and more likely your child is to progress and excel. So always maintain those open lines of communication with us, whether it be your principal, whether it be the classroom teacher, asking questions, making sure you are looking at the reports that we're sending home and understanding. And if not, reaching out. We're always here to help and assist and have those conversations as to what the language in those reports means. It may have a lot of jargon in it, but we're here to help break it down and make it understandable in a way that you're able to use it as from the parents' end of it and be able to support your child at home. As always, I thank you for joining in. I hope this information was helpful and shed a little bit of light about the WIDA assessment. I know it feels like we do a lot of assessments. The WIDA assessment, like I shared, is a state required assessment. So we are required to assess students using the WIDA, specifically those who are identified as possible English language learners. Again, thank you for joining me. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. And thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone.
HES Academies have been serving the Detroit metro area for over 23 years, promoting academic excellence, leadership, and cultural diversity, ranking as some of the top schools in the state of Michigan. Our pre-K through 12th grade students enjoy tuition-free, state-accredited education by STEM certified and highly qualified staff with no geographical restrictions, and with advanced placement, college dual enrollment, scholarship, and Arabic language programs. Noor International Academy in Sterling Heights at NIAPSA.org, Star International Academy in Dearborn Heights and in Canton at StarPSA.org, Universal Academy in Detroit at UniversalPSA.org, and Universal Learning Academy in Westland at ULAPSA.org. Join HES Academies today and enjoy a free Chromebook for every enrolled student.